back to the Valley to Peak Nutrition Podcast. This is going to be a little bit different podcast than usual in that I interviewed a founder of a nutrition product. The founder's name is Nora, and Nora reached out to me on social media to see if I would be interested in trying her product, Neve. Now, I was interested. I'm always curious about what's out there, but I've always held a pretty hard line from trying to be too married to any one brand, mostly because I feel like it really devalues the recommendation if you're partnered with a specific supplement product. You can't really trust someone who has a partnership with brands like that. So I've always tried to stay pretty agnostic to certain brands, products, etc., and just use what I like and have found to be effective. So I was interested in having her on to hear more about the development of the products in general, as well as her story, how she founded it, what she was interested in. And she also has a significant amount of experience in the backcountry. And so she just seemed like a really interesting guest to have on, regardless of the product, regardless of its nutritional contents, etc. Now, of course, she is a founder, so we do dive into the product, and I'm not saying I'm promoting it or not promoting it, but I think it's a really great conversation to talk about what to look at in nutrition products, as well as hear her story to how she got where she is. And it is interesting. It's an interesting product in the sense of it's a pouch, and it's more of a whole foods type of a product. So if you're really averse to trying some of these really high carb drink mixes, this could be an alternative. But one thing that I really appreciated about her was her honesty. She talks about the product and that it's not necessarily going to be for people doing a lot of high intensity and higher in carbohydrate. The product's actually higher in fat. And so we talk about that. And anyway, I think it's a great conversation that I hope that you enjoy. And I really appreciate her coming on and taking the time to chat with me, not really knowing what to expect, but she was awesome. She's got a great story, and we talk about some of that. So enjoy the podcast. Please don't hesitate to reach out to her if you have questions. You can find her contact information in the show notes. All right, so we'll do like a formal introduction. Maybe this just will be the formal introduction, but how does someone go like from, I'm assuming, I shouldn't say go from because that makes it sound like you've lost interest, which would defeat the purpose of the podcast. But how do you get interested in nutrition, endure school to become an RD, start this, but work in that? Like, how does that whole thing?
So I'm not an RD, just to be clear. I worked with one to develop the product, but my dream is to do this full time. So as I mentioned, I finished school. I worked in the outdoor space. I felt like I just tapped out, hit a glass ceiling pretty quickly, and I just felt like there's nowhere to go. All the meanwhile, this product had started to infiltrate my brain, and I was just becoming more and more of an endurance athlete, struggling to eat. And so working in the outdoor industry, felt like I couldn't really grow there. So this product I knew I wanted to launch and knew that I would get more financial stability outside of the outdoor industry. And I had actually done a minor in renewable energy. So I was interested in pursuing I'm still someone who needs to work like in passion aligned spaces. So I knew I needed my day job to be like mission passion aligned, but I also needed to be more sustainable than the outdoor industry. So it was a strategic move so I could fund this business because I am self-funded. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. And so I think that's actually a good foundation to work from. So like walk me through that. How did you get introduced to the outdoors? How did you develop a passion for it? How did you get involved and interested in endurance sports? Like, what's the origin and the steps before you are where you are that sort of got you here?
So I'm really lucky in that my mom was actually my influence for loving the outdoors, which is super rare. And so my mom, when I was young, she was rock climbing. She was climbing ice and rock. She was skiing. She was skinning up the resort. I'm from Pennsylvania, so what, like a couple hundred vertical feet on like original like Fruity bindings, like super heavy, like full nylon skins. I was like, what the heck is she doing? But that's kind of what I grew up with, and I was always athletic. I always played sports. I remember when I was in high school, my mom went to Nepal for a month, and was trekking, and I was like, "What? What is going on?" But I grew up always skiing, and so she's taught skiing, and I was a ski racer. So every weekend we would drive to go ski together. And then when I was going to college, I knew I wanted to shift into this backcountry space. I wanted to learn how to like essentially what is backcountry skiing, how do you approach it, all that kind of stuff. And I started backcountry skiing and I got really into it and I loved it and it felt like freedom to me is where I met all my friends. And I just kept going. Curiosity led me. Like, what happens if we keep going here? What happens if we do that? What does this day kinda look like? And so I kind of say I accidentally became an endurance athlete. I was just it was just pure curiosity, and so then all of a sudden I was doing these massive days in that backcountry, and I had no idea how I was supposed to fuel myself, as an athlete, as a woman, as a human. Like, I had no idea. So definitely had some disordered eating tendencies, but I noticed a lot of people using, like, applesauce pouches, even baby food in the backcountry, and so, like, that's really interesting. Clearly, people want, this kind of real food or plant-based food in the backcountry, and so I spent a month in Chile actually skiing, and I am a vegetarian, it's a very meat-heavy culture, so I was like, "I'm gonna try the pouch," and I realized the pouch is awesome because it's resealable, so I'd be, like, mid-boot pack, take out the pouch, fuel, cap it back up, put it in my pocket, keep going, no tummy problems, but it was 70 calories, and so that wasn't providing, like, sustainable fuel, and I looked around and no one was doing this. There's millions of energy bars, there's millions of gels, but there was this huge white space kind of between the 2, and so I decided to do it, and it took me 6 years to launch, and I brought in a registered dietitian because having, like, science-backed nutrition is incredibly important to me because there's so much bad info out there. So I pulled in an expert, got her she was actually in the food lab with me when we were developing, which was awesome. And yeah, I launched Neve a year ago.
Okay, so that was one question was how do you say this? Because it like
Yeah.
you when you read it, it seems like that's the way it would be pronounced, but it almost seems too easy. Like it almost seems like if I try to publicly praise her for this product in public, I'm going to botch the name and it's going to have some sort of a hidden meaning, but it does mean say it again. It does. I think it's
Neve.
pronounced neve. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
is there a meaning behind that? Is there a reason you named it that? So
Yeah.
tell us about that.
So neve is a kind of snow you find on the glacier. So I'm a really big backcountry skier, and my problems with fueling came from my passion from backcountry skiing, and a lot of the inspiration for the product came from backcountry skiing. And neve also is snow in Italian. Hard to pronounce, I know, but it looks great on the packaging, so we went for it.
So what were you doing? You mentioned 70 calories. What in the early days before you launched this, what were you taking? And what exactly were you feeling as the outcome from taking that and realizing I should feel better than I do?
Well, firstly, I just wasn't fueling enough. I had no idea how many calories I actually needed, right? So you would go to the store, right, and athletes are told, "Here's the energy bar aisle, take something." And so I was doing more yeah, I was doing bars, I wasn't enjoying them, like, it was like, "You eat this because you have to." And so it was just a miserable experience. So I love to bake, so I started to bake all my own trail snacks. I would bake, like, interesting breads and, baked goods and all that kinda stuff, and that's what I would actually start to bring fueling, and it be kind of to fuel me, and it kind of became a competition. What's the weirdest thing I can bring? And, like, will it be sustainable out there? So I really just did start to fuel on, like, actual food, real food, I guess, when I was ski touring. But at the end of the day, like, you need something that you know is gonna support you and sustain you, and the cool thing about neve is you can eat it plain, or you can pair it with something else, and so seeing that I'll be spend 10 hours in the backcountry, and it's really hard to get diverse nutrition in, right? So in this pouch, we are getting fruits and vegetables, which I wasn't getting off of what I was making or buying, and you also get a lot of electrolytes, which was really helpful because obviously you're moving and exerting, and you need to be fueling yourself properly.
Is the version that you guys have now like the version that you began with? Or how and maybe a better question would be, and maybe there's no big story behind it, but a better question could be, what did the different iterations and versions of Neve look like as you started to build it?
This is actually V1. So a lot of the inspiration behind Neve was, you expect peanut butter chocolate, you expect peanut butter banana. I really wanted to do unique and interesting flavor profiles because I was just tired of these are the combinations we make and that's that. And with the pouch, like, you open up a world of creativity, like, you're not restricted to, a grain and a rice syrup and dried fruit like you would be in a bar, like, you can use whatever the heck you want. And so when I brought on a food lab to help me develop because I wanted the products to be interesting and scalable from the start. So basically I told them I want a good, better, best, meaning like, um, crazy idea, middle of the road idea, and kind of safe idea, and I did 4 SKUs, and they kinda presented me with those options, and I chose from there, and I was involved in a lot of the brainstorming, and then went to a food lab for a day and just iterated and tried so many different versions, which was really cool on its own. But yeah, then I launched these. I will be doing another production run in the new year, and so I'm gonna make some tweaks just to, one of the flavors, but yeah, this is really V1.
So, like, I would imagine, and you can tell me because you're the expert, but I would imagine as you sit in this lab and you're working with this group of folks trying to develop this, and you have like, it's pretty controlled. You're making small batches. You can really have a lot of control over the tweaks and the adjustments. But as you try to scale that upwards, and then you try to shove that in this shelf stable packaging, one that's resealable, what did you notice the challenges starting to become to sort of match all of those things up and actually have a product that you could, potentially use and market to people?
So, as you mentioned, when you do something in small scale versus when you scale up for the first time, stuff happens that you just don't expect. And so some of those things were like, for example, a texture was really important to me with other available smoothie pouches or baby food. It's really thin and runny textured. And I don't know if you ever use them yourself, but it just feels not sustaining for like an adult. And so texture was a huge focus. Is like, how can I get this to feel more palatable to an adult? And it's not just doesn't feel like it drips right through you. And so when we scaled that, the texture did come out on one of the the texture is different on both flavors. That's not intentional. It's just the way it goes. So that was kind of one consequence of scaling. There's other small stuff like color things or that kind of stuff, but mostly I think the scaling did do pretty well. It's a simple product at its heart, right? It's fruits and vegetables. You mix it up and you put it in the pouch.
I think you made a couple of points there. So number one, you are right. And I have a funny story. So I have a friend, and he and I spent a lot of time in the mountains together, and he always brings with him the squeezable applesauce packages,
Mhm.
and his comment is always the same. It's like he's never shared this thought with me when he opens this up, but he shares it with me every day of every trip we go on. Like, it's a new idea, but he looks at me when he opens this, and he's like, "Man, there is just nothing like the difference in texture and flavor of an applesauce packet compared to everything else that you usually bring back here." And I can't help but watch him eat that and feel like I'm watching my 6-year-old son eat his lunch, because you're right. I mean, it is nice to have a different texture. It is, like, almost has a hydrating feature to it as opposed to I laughed to myself when you were talking about the bars because, like, I have yet to work with, an athlete or a backcountry skier or hunter or whatever, and them really like the bars. They like the convenience of them, but they usually will struggle to get through many of them after the first day, and so this whole idea of some sort of a different texture really helps them. But to your next point, it's like 80 calories on big days in the mountain are basically gonna last me 20 minutes, maybe. And it's not long after that that you feel like you either need something or you have to bring so many of those packets that it's unrealistic, right? Because they're heavy. They are heavy being liquid as opposed to drier foods. What is it about Neve other than the unique flavor profiles like you kind of talked about? What is it about your product from a macro standpoint that makes it more sustaining than an applesauce pouch, call it?
Yeah. So we have 2 flavors, and I design each flavor to kind of fit an athlete's nutrition strategy in a different way. So the boysenberry beet, this is my best seller by far. People love this flavor. Is designed for more sustained energy, and the tart cherry cacao is more for recovery. So the boysenberry beet has no added protein. The tart cherry cacao has 5 grams of added protein. So let's start with the boysenberry, 180 calories, right? So it's going to be way more calories than the applesauce pouch. My goal was how many calories can I possibly get into this pouch? The other thing that's way different is the base is fat. So this is not gonna be your high intensity fuel, it's gonna be your all day low and slow fuel, your pre-workout fuel, your post-work pre-workout fuel, your just, like, replace the energy bar fuel. It's going to burn slower in your body, so it's gonna give you more of that sustained feeling versus an applesauce pouch, which, like, drips in and drips out. So that's like a huge value add, especially when you're doing these like really long endurance events where you can handle a little bit more fat. And actually a pouch of boysenberry beet has more electrolytes than a 20-ounce Gatorade, which is really, really cool. And then the boysenberry beet has 23 grams of carbs and then no added protein intentionally. And then there's also no fiber in either of them for very clear reasons. And the tart cherry cacao is a 4-to-1 carbs to protein ratio. So it's great transitional fuel. Let's say you're jumping in your car, driving home from a long day, and you just want to jumpstart that recovery process. My athletes love it for that. Or for really long days where you're like, hey, I do need to think about protein because I'm going to be outside for a really long time. That one is the one with some protein. And that one has 190 calories.
So you did like the Chat GPT rundown, not that you're pulling that from Chat GPT, but it was like, here's the nuts and bases of all you need to know. So I want to go back and look at those kind of separately because it's just it's one thing that my goal is for every single episode is that someone can listen to it and there is something in it that makes them say, "Huh, didn't know that," and they could potentially go apply it, right? So I want to go back and review those. One thing you said in there though is you said there is no fiber for obvious reasons. What are the obvious reasons?
You don't want to poop your pants while in the backcountry is pretty much it.
Bingo.
So I
Oh,
see. So yeah, I strip the fiber because it is mostly fruit and vegetable juice. There's a we need fiber, no doubt, but there's a time and a place, and frankly, putting in fiber when you're like on these long days is not the time nor the place.
so what's in here as far as from like the fruit puree and where you are getting your carb source is predominantly, and this is for you to correct me if I'm wrong, it's predominantly the juice of those fruits, not necessarily the fibrous pulp. And then it looks like there's some cane sugar and some
There's
other stuff in here too.
exactly, yeah,
Okay. So going back, you have basically two products. One product you are marketing as like a recovery type of fuel. One product you're marketing as an energy source. And the main differences between those two is one, from an ingredient standpoint, what's in them. Not only in terms of how it has an impact on the macronutrient profile, but even the ingredients that you're using. So, as an example, and again, and you jump in here and be like, nope, that's wrong. Let me talk and then correct me. One would be like from a recovery standpoint, you're using some cherries because of the anti-inflammatory properties that have been promoted with cherries and everything around that, right?
exactly.
And then on the recovery side, it does tweak the macronutrient profile a little bit because you're providing 5 grams of protein and 20 grams of carbohydrate. I want to go back to the 4-to-1 here in a minute. But then on the fueling side, there's virtually no protein because, of course, as we preach all the time, protein's not a fuel source, it is a recovery product. So you have two different ones.
Correct, yeah.
Did I miss anything at all about like just the main differences between the two?
No, that's, broad strokes, that's correct, and then in the, tart cherry, we do have pea and rice protein, so it's a complete source of protein instead of just having one, and not the other. But yeah, you also hit the nail on the head with, like, tart cherries and the recovery because 'cause they're proven to aid in recovery, and then beets and the boysenberry beet for blood thinners, so that was really every ingredient in this product, I can tell you why it's in there.
So you have both of those with cherries and beets, vasodilators. It opens up the blood vessel. It allows more blood to flow to the muscle, increases recovery. At least that's the theory and thinking that's really growing in popularity with people,
Yeah.
right? Why 4-to-1? Why do we care at all about a 4-to-1 ratio for recovery?
I wanna be very clear, I'm not the expert in the room, but based on all the experts I've consulted in my own research, so you correct me if I'm wrong, but essentially 4 to 1 is, 4 is the carbohydrates and 1 is, the protein, and that's kind of the recommended for recovery. So when you're doing these endurance events, you're depleting your glycogen stores, and so you actually wanna fill those back up, and that would be the carbohydrates, and also balance it out with protein. You will need more protein, like, later, but to help that recovery, topping off those glycogens, getting them back up with about that 4 to 1, which is what popular science is saying right now, is the ideal ratio.
You nailed it.
Okay, I was like, I feel like I'm being tested.
No, and you weren't at all. I mean, you nailed it, and what I love the most about it, because again, like, I'm not asking these questions. I understand, and I apologize if it seems like I'm quizzing you. That's not at all the case. It's really it's really to help anyone who listens to know who maybe didn't know beforehand.
Yeah.
But what I love the most is that there is a very clear, um, let's see, what do I wanna say here? There has been a very clear intention on your part to give thought to what's in here. You didn't just, you know, wake up one morning, throw some stuff in a Vitamix, package it, and start selling it with this cool name. Like, you have really gone through the paces to kind of think about what is in here, when it is applicable. Like, one thing that we preach all of the time, more so to people we work with than on here, is that everything has a case use. All nutrition has a case use. There are times when that case use is, yeah, like, sugar can be helpful in different forms on the mountain. Am I going to sit here and pop, you know, tons of sugar while I'm sitting at this desk? Probably not, but everything has a case use. And I think that you have kind of highlighted that well. I'm switching gears a little bit here, but what have you found to be your greatest challenge since going through the development phases, working with food scientists, working with an RD, which, by the way, I'm jealous. I like stuff like this, but that's great that
Next
you
time. Good to know, you're in the
next
network now.
next time, yeah. Working with an RD to develop this, to saying, look, I think we've got something here. Then you start down the path of marketing and, pounding the pavement and trying to tell people about this. What have you seen to be, like, just your greatest challenge that you I was gonna say, what do you think has been your greatest challenge that you didn't expect to be a challenge? Or maybe you went into it knowing this is gonna be the hardest thing that I've got to deal with.
Yeah. So since launching, the hardest thing has definitely been education. And so to peel back the layers a little bit, this is a very new category. People they know what an energy bar is. They know when they buy an energy bar, more or less, it's gonna taste like variations of the same thing. I'm not saying that taste is good, but they can expect the flavor, they can expect the consistency. It's clear expectations. This is a whole new category. What's the taste like? What's the texture like? How do I use it? When do I use it? What the heck is it? What are the macros? How is it helping me? So there's so many questions for the consumer that I have to educate them. I have to tell them this is how, when, why, what, where, like all of those. And education, you don't look at the packaging, you're like, "I know what it means immediately." It means that I have to maybe I don't convert them after the 7th time, but after, like, the 10th or 15th touch point. So that's been a really hard thing to overcome is, like, how do I get people to trust this product? How do I educate people as efficiently as possible? You think with launching a new category and also because I've seen more and more pouches, applesauce pouches being used in the backcountry, people are like, "Great, like a athlete version," and, word of mouth, and it just lifts it, but that's not how it goes. It's trying a new product, especially for an athlete, it's really risky. You don't wanna get a tummy ache, you don't wanna feel sick, like, you don't trust your nutrition, you're kinda screwed. And so that's been really challenging is educating people.
What are you doing, and what have you found to be the most beneficial way to educate them? And,
Event
and I guess as a part of that, we can well, go ahead and answer that. Go ahead and answer that.
I would say events are really valuable because the consumer can taste the product. So I'll go to events, set up the booth, and then I'll have a lot of, like, samples so I can talk to people. I love to meet the founder. People are like, "You started this? This is you?" I'm like, "Yeah, this is me." But then being able to, like, taste the product, experience the product, like, I can tell them directly, "This is what each pouch is for." That's been really valuable. It's just not really scalable because I am a one-woman founder.
What's been the challenge there, right? Like, I mean, in what I do, being solo has its challenges, and we're not exactly solo, but ish. But I could imagine in something like this that is so hands-on and you are the marketer, you are the web, you are the developer, you are the social media, you're everything, right? What has been your greatest challenge there?
If I'm being really honest, mentally keeping up and taking the blows and being punched in the face. Every day is new rejection. Every day is a new problem. There's so much that happens that's completely out of my control. And this business like I am the cog that turns this business. And if this cog stops turning, this business evaporates because I'm so small. And so that's a lot of pressure, and I'm a very high output person. I like to push myself, and I believe in this so much, and so that's a lot of pressure, and that mentally being strong, I think it's so important, and it's so hard.
Yeah, and I think that that is a very honest and candid answer, and I think that that is probably anyone who's, like, tried to do anything like you're doing, can definitely relate to, but, you know, what I have found is if you simply wake up and do the next thing. Like it just is inevitable if you keep putting in the time and the work. And I mean, in the digging that I did prior to doing this podcast with you, it certainly seems like you have already done a lot of that and continue to do it. And so I'm really excited for that reason alone, just to see where it goes for you. I think it's great.
Thank you. Yeah, I try to be really transparent and open about this because I think people see someone start a business, they're like, "Oh, they're doing great. They're living off this and that and the other thing," but it's like that's not the reality, and I think I try to share that. I try to share that with people so they know, and, like, it makes me turn into a person. I'm not just the product. I actually am human.
Yep. Nope. I think that it's a great point to point out. And look, we generally will plug and we'll give you the opportunity to plug like where people can find you towards the end of the show. But for people, where are you based out of?
I live in Colorado, so I'm, like, Vale, Colorado.
So if you are, you're a one woman show and even if there are 20 shows a year, there are multiple times that those shows overlap, plus you have a full-time job. And the point that I'm trying to make is if someone can't come find you and taste these products live, what options do they have to either look into Neve or get a sampler? Like what are the options there to where you could get the product into someone's hands and see if they like it?
Yeah, there's a trial pack on my website, which is eatneve.com. So it's EATNEVE.com, and there's a trial pack for that exact reason, so you can just try one of each flavor and make sure that you like it and it works for you.
Awesome. All right. I have a few more things that I want to cover with you. One is, and I think hopefully these are funner questions too. If you could picture Neve 5 to 10 years down the road, what would it look like? If you had your ideal dream wish list.
I want Neve to be the next Cliff Bar. I think I look a lot of about at the story of Cliff Bar as kind of inspiration, not because Cliff Bars are good, but I think if we look at the story, at the time that Cliff Bar was founded, the only thing on the market was Power Bar, and Gary Erickson, the founder of Cliff Bar, was like, "This sucks. Like, I am not enjoying this." So he went to his kitchen and he started taking organic ingredients, which wasn't a thing in energy bars, and mixing them together, and that's basically how Clif Bar started, and he started to give it to niche outdoor, groups. So he went to cyclists, he went to climbers, and that's how he kind of built the groundswell that created Clif Bar. He did his first million in just, like, outdoor retail, so those gear stores, those bike shops, and it just grew and grew, and now, I mean, I dare you to find a gas station that doesn't have a Clif Bar or, like, someone's desk drawer that doesn't have a Clif Bar. And so I really believe in the pouch concept. I think nutritionally it's way better than an energy bar. Taste-wise, it's way better than an energy bar. Usability is way better than an energy bar. And so I think that Neve can replace your Cliff Bar or whatever energy bar you're using. But that is very ambitious.
Well, in your defense, I think if you didn't have the ambition, all of the challenges and the mental things that you face, you would quit. And I'm using you as a general broad persona, like not literally you, Nora, but any of us. If there was not some sort of vision, passion, and drive, like when things start to get really difficult, you would stop. And I mean, that's even true of what we do. You know, when I started Valley to Peak, you know, I had a hospital job. I'd work it all day. We didn't have kids at the time, and my wife was teaching, so she'd stay after teaching, grading papers, and getting her classroom all cute. And I would stay and just, you know, pour all my time and energy into Valley to Peak. And when I first started it, it had nothing to do about being our income. I just wanted to be and to have and to create the absolute best resources on nutrition for the outdoors that I could for people. And at that time, there really wasn't any. Social media was not that big. Instagram had just started. Podcasts just really started to be this concept of you had a lot of people really listening to them to where people started putting out a lot of, you know, good shows. If I had not had that, you know, ambition to be a trusted and reliable resource, um, when things got really difficult, I I would have quit for sure. So it can sound like this big grandiose idea of being the next Cliff Bar, but I think that that very thing, that sort of apple in your eye that you've got for that vision you have for it, no doubt makes you go show up to the next, you know, outdoor retail show, makes you go to the mom and pop bicycle shops and run clubs and Saturday morning 50Ks and all this, just like giving people samples of your product. So if you are willing to do that, I hope you absolutely crush the market and, you know, do better than Cliff Bar. I think it's great. And like I said, you've already got some evidence that suggests you've done so. And I'm happy for you.
Thank you. Yeah, that means a lot. It's, being an endurance athlete with full-time job trying to start a business, I really had to reprioritize, which is hard, but for the first time in my life, and it's, like, crazy that I'm even admitting this, but, like, there are days I'm on my bike or on skis and I'm like, "No, I wanna go work." And I've never enjoyed a day job in my life. Like, I've never enjoyed working for anybody, and now that I'm building and creating this thing that I believe in, that I know athletes love, it's and it's mine, like, it's really changes. Yeah, it's really cool.
It's awesome. All right. Some fun questions, one serious question, and then I'll let you go. And when I ask you these are kind of like, you know, these are kind of like, oh, what do they call it? Like rapid fire, I guess. But I don't really like using popular terms. So we're just going to call these fun questions. But when I ask you them, think about them in the context of all of your outdoor experience. It could be on the trip that you did down to Chile. It could be, you know, some of the adventures that you had with your mom. Maybe it's recently, whatever. Ready?
Ready.
Most unexpectedly good trail meal.
When I travel, I like to fuel with the local goods. So when I was in Chile, I was doing a lot of, like, empanadas. I mean, I think you expect that to be good, so maybe that's a bad end. But it's really fun to go and be like, "What do you got today?" And take that and you're eating empanadas and wherever the heck you are.
No, I love that. I could not agree more. Like when we go anywhere, you know, anywhere, I'm getting ready to throw my wife under the bus. She when she and my kids want to go out to eat, which they really enjoy doing, it's like their favorite extracurricular thing to do. And the topic, of course, then ventures into, okay, well, where do you want to go? They always like to go to Applebee's or Chili's or whatever. I'm like, I can make everything on that menu 100 times better than they can at home. Let's go to, like, there's a local brewery here that has great food, or there's a local Italian place. There's actually a place here that makes authentic empanadas too. So I agree with you 100% that when I can get local food that's didn't arrive frozen, I would prefer to do that.
I would I guess to add on to that, I did, like, a 220-mile, like, mountain bike race this summer, and I was rolling in to, like, refuel at, like, 2 a.m., and my partner had made me some Annie's Mac, and wow, that hit like
Hit it?
no other.
225 miles. That's amazing. I mean, which just a sidebar, for an endurance athlete to, develop this product, that's another, I think feather in the cap too.
I like the I know, I developed the product for a reason.
All right. Worst gear purchase of all time.
Oh boy. I don't know, I would have to I'm really bad at rapid questions because I put way too much thought into them. I actually don't know what I, like, I'm really good at complaining about gear, like, I'm excellent at it, and my partner is, a designer, so we develop, like, designs, backpacks, and all I do is complain about them. I don't know, I would have to put more thought into that.
Okay. Okay. Well, I hope this doesn't throw the company, but what company does he work for?
Code epoxy.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Worst, or I'm sorry, we already asked that. What is most recent gear purchase that you love?
I mean, I just got new dropper pulls for my bike. That's the most recent. I wouldn't say I I love that. I got a new bike this summer. I got more of like a trail bike, which I use for that race that I'd mentioned, and it's been a shift of figuring like my other bike was I call my big bike, which is more for downhill, which is it wasn't a downhill bike, but for me it was more downhill. But I was enjoying the trail bike because realizing how much weight you save on a light bike has been really nice for my legs.
Awesome. One piece of advice that you would give for someone interested in tackling endurance-based sports, but have not tried their first endurance-based sport.
Finding people who know more I mean, for backcountry skiing specifically, finding people who know more than you and who are willing to go out and be patient and teach you, or just not backcountry skiing, find people who will go with you and just teach you the ways. Because there's so much just get up and go, and then find folks who will go with you. Because there's a lot to learn, whether it's, like, safety, what, like, there is with backcountry skiing or it's running, like, there are so many tips and tricks that, like, a mentor can help you with and teach you, like, there's absolutely no reason to force yourself to learn on your own, so find someone who is willing to hold your hand and take your hand.
Book or podcast recommendations for long days on the mountain or in the car? Your favorite.
Right now, I'm listening to Shell Game, which is it's a podcast about AI, and it's season 2 just launched. But it's about this guy basically trying to build a company with, using agentic AI, and it's crazy. I listen to a lot of podcasts, so there's always a podcast in the moment.
Are you an audiobook fan?
I don't listen to audiobooks, isn't that weird?
No, it's not at all. In fact, like, I would say the number of good audiobooks out there is very limited, and I would say that that list is limited by if the author reads the book or not. To me, that makes or breaks the book. Like, I've read books and then listened to them, and there are some that are really great to read, and then I'll listen to the audiobook, and I'm not even through half of chapter 1. I'm like, I can't do it. Versus if
Because
the
the author's just bad at talking.
no, the author is excellent. If the author reads the book, it
Gotcha.
is great. It is, in my experience, in most cases. But if you get a narrator, or if you get a almost like an AI generated voice, I'm out.
Yeah,
I can't do it.
I'm with you.
Let's see. We already talked about where listeners can find you. So I have two last questions. Number one, what words of advice would you have for people who are in the same boat that you were in when you recognized there was an issue, you potentially had a solution, and you wanted to go down that path of trying to figure that out? What advice would you have for someone who is interested in entrepreneurship?
I would say you're not qualified, you're never going to be, and that literally doesn't matter. No one who starts a business knows what they're doing, and so that's okay.
That is so good. That's so good. Of the businesses that I know that have gone on to be very successful, almost none of them set out with the intent to be successful. Almost all of them set out with a passion and a desire to make something great, and then as things began to come at them, they figured it out and or put out the irons or whatever. I don't know many who sort of open their doors with the idea of, I want this to be this huge thing, and then they became it. Almost never have I've seen some that didn't, right? But I think that is probably the best summary and the fewest words that I've ever heard about entrepreneurship, like, period. That was great, really great. Last but not least, you talk about this on your website, talk about it in your blog a little bit, but this and if you're comfortable sharing with it, if not, then we can skip it, but this past year, you talk about being swept in your first avalanche. Can you sort of describe that and, talk about I don't wanna say lessons, that just seems like such a cliche question to ask, but talk about how that experience has impacted your perspective of running a business, your perspective of, like, risk and things of that nature.
Yeah, cool, sorry, what was the first part of the question?
Yeah, just talk about just that incident itself.
Clearly, it's a little trigger, I was like, I just totally blacked out. Yeah, so, as I mentioned, I'm a big backcountry skier. I was out for a day with friends. It was, warm out. We had one objective, and we were having fun, so we said, "Let's keep going." In our local kinda range here, which is called the Gore Range here in, Vail, and, um we knew that the avalanche danger that day was surface level, which meant, like, only the top of the snowpack would be the problem, which meant it was manageable, and it also meant that yeah, just to be mindful while you're out. So if you did trigger something, it probably wasn't going to be hugely consequential, but obviously any avalanche is consequential. And so, before you go out, you always, "What's the snowpack doing today? What's the avalanche danger?" And so we were approaching up, like, a couloir to drop into the other side of a couloir, and a couloir is kind of just like a long, narrow, typically rocks on both sides, feature, and we were just in the apron, and we had talked previously about, "Hey, like, this is where this is if an avalanche was gonna happen, like, where the run you talk about the run out zone, like, the risks. I obviously only go when you don't think there's an avalanche that's gonna happen, but you always do prepare by saying, "Okay, if something were to happen, consequences are pretty low." And so we had those discussions and, kept skinning, and I was 3rd in the group, and my friend who was 1st kind of skinned towards a feature that, maybe shouldn't have been skinned towards, and skinning is just, like, basically, when you're backcountry skiing, you're walking uphill, you got these things called skins on your skis, which allows you to climb. They're like a mohair nylon mix, and your heels are free, so you can literally just, like, walk uphill. And she just stepped out on a weak spot in the snowpack, which was by a rock. So rocks attract heat, which makes facets, which are kinda like think about, like, sugary snow, and that's, like, a weak spot in the snow. So when she stepped on this weak spot, the snow propagated, which means it just kind of imagine, like, a crack across the, snowpack. And sorry, I was the 2nd person who triggered that, and I was 3rd, so I kind of got carried away. My friend, yelled, I looked up, and just was like, "Okay, this is happening." Kind of, the whole everything just slowed down, time just, like, kind of slowed. And I remember distinctly thinking, and I read about this in the blog, I was like, "I need to call my partner and let him know that everything is gonna be okay." He was in Asia, like I mentioned, he's a designer, so he goes to Asia twice a year, and he just happened to be there. But I remember thinking, "I'm gonna pull out my phone while I'm in the same language and say, like, 'Hey, I'm gonna be okay.'" It's just crazy how you think, 'cause my initial thought was I'm gonna outski this, and I don't say that because I'm this big badass. I say this because, like, I'm very aware of my abilities, and I was pretty confident, but because I was in walk mode, meaning my heels were free, skiing just wasn't an option, and I had skins on. And so I just decided, "Okay, just gonna sit, let the snow take me, and I'm gonna manage what I can manage." Because also because of my free heel, I was also worried about my skis getting whipped around, which would, like, tear my ACL or something. So I thought, "Okay, I'm not gonna fight right now. Let the snow kind of take me," and then I saw convexity, which is, essentially like a roll in the snow, and so when there are different features in the terrain, that could cause bigger avalanche incidents. So, for example, what I was worried about in this case was if the snow rolled over this roll, it could potentially, like, create pressure and cause the avalanche to step down and take the next layer of snow. Because snowpack is kinda like a cake. It's kinda how I think about it, like, different densities, like you have the cake, the frosting, the cake again, the frosting again, and it varies based on temperature, and a lot of different things. So, I knew that if the snow came over this roll and it stepped down deeper, I'd be in a really bad, place. So actually had an airbag on, which I always tore, and an airbag is essentially like, a balloon that inflates, and the concept is it keeps you above the snow. And if you are get if you do get partially buried, it's like bright orange, so typically your friends could see you really quickly. So, I pulled my airbag and airbag blew, and pretty much as soon as I pulled it, the snow had stopped moving. Luckily, I was fine. I was unharmed. I was never buried. I was always at the top. Again, how I mentioned at the beginning. Assessing the avalanche danger, we knew that the chances of anything happening that would step down and trigger the whole entire pack to slide was pretty low, so that was I'm glad that that was the assessment we made. And yeah, stopped moving and stood up and yelled to my friends that I'm okay because communication is absolutely key in these situations, and, I'm really lucky that I came out unharmed, at least physically unharmed.
Yeah, so having that experience, did that shape your perspective in any way? I don't even know how to ask this. Did it shape your perspective different in any way that it had before? Like, so to give you an example, sometimes when people have experiences like that, they will often talk about how it either makes them consider risk less because they realize how life is short. And by risk meaning not necessarily something from a like an extreme sports mountaineering type of thing, like they're willing to go do more after something like that, but more so they're willing to go do things that they'd put off in life, right? Or they find themselves to be more cautious. So did that experience have any sort of an impact on your risk assessment of anything that shaped you in any way?
I definitely pulled back the rest of the season. This was in the spring. So I definitely pulled back from being really excited to ski. I think that was actually the most shocking part about this whole situation though for me because I mentioned I have another blog written about this too, but back when I was in college, I did a trip to Mexico to ski Pico de Orizaba, which is the third tallest peak in North America. And I was actually climbing, and witnessed a fatality. So I witnessed someone not in my party, not in my group, but someone slipped, to their death essentially. And that was incredibly impactful. And I didn't sleep for a while. I would wake up in the night having flashbacks. And so when this avalanche happened, I was really scared to go to bed. I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna be having flashbacks all night." And I didn't. I slept perfectly normal. And I woke up and I thought, "Oh, there is something wrong with me if I'm, like, this immune to trauma that this, like, really scary thing just happened to me and I slept fine." And usually, like, I don't. And so I am entering this backcountry season with a lot of curiosity for will the trauma start to pop up in times I don't expect it? So I don't know. And so it hasn't really made me wanna, like, do this stuff that I haven't done before. I think mostly 'cause I do things that I wanna do. I am like I do enjoy safe risk, like, managed risk, but I don't know, I'm still trying to figure out how this trauma is gonna impact me.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I just thought, I read about that on your blog. Had seen that in there, and I thought it would be just a good topic to touch on because I think, obviously it has an impact on people and can help other people think about that themselves and learn lessons from it.
There's a lot of shame, I think, with avalanches, and I try to whatever I do, whether it's starting Neve, I try to be transparent and shame-free because the only way we learn is if we talk about it.
Yeah. So and is the shame with that community built around the idea of it was your fault you triggered it and the
I think
impact it
there's
either has on you directly or, people that are around you or
yeah.
indirectly?
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of you triggered an avalanche, you're not smart enough or educated enough or whatever stupid thing to be in the backcountry, which is I mean, statistically speaking, like, the more time you spend in the backcountry, the higher your chances are to be caught in an avalanche, and I'm not saying that to sway one way or the other, but that's just, like, you're exposed more to risk, right? And so there's a lot of, like, "Oh, you were in an avalanche, you're not safe, or your decision making isn't good," or this, that, or the other thing. And that's not true. Like, it could happen to anybody. You could be a professional guide with thousands of hours in the backcountry and something still happens. So, yeah, I think that's a lot of the shame that comes into it.
Well, thank you for taking time to join us. I mean, we've already talked about like you've got a full-time job, you're doing this too, you're trying to live your own life, and then you carve out time to do this. So I will link everything that we've talked about, like where to find you, where to find the products, etc., on the show notes. Any parting words of wisdom to folks who might be listening?
Yeah, I mean, if you wanna try Neve out, you definitely should. The website's eatneve.com, or also I just launched on Amazon. I have about 40 retail partners, so you can always check out our store locator to see if you can grab Neve near you or follow us on Instagram. But I think also if you wanna reach out and talk about anything that I talked about, I'm always happy to talk. I love to talk about this stuff. We learn a lot from other people, so reach out if you want to.
Great. Well, Nora, thank you for coming. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, once again, we want to say thanks to Nora for coming on and talking about her product and sharing some of her stories and some of the things that she's encountered in the backcountry and just a clear passion for that, which is something that we've all got in common. So she's been awesome, and I've appreciated her as well. We'll be back again with more new episodes in the coming weeks. We have more Q&As, and of course, like always, if you have questions that you want to get covered and answered as they pertain to you, we love covering those. You can send those to info@v2pnutrition.com, and we will definitely make our rounds to them and cover them. We'll talk to you again soon. Have a great week, everybody.